Welcome to another episode of Conversations in Eating Recovery. I'm Alison Ross, Clinical Director at NDH Therapy, and I'm joined by two amazing therapists from our team, Lindsay Hall and Sydney Hafer. So, as therapists who specialize in eating disorders and as people who've recovered from them, we understand that while the holidays can bring joy and connection, they can also present unique challenges for those recovering with disordered eating. With the constant focus on holiday food, family gatherings, and social events, it's so easy to feel triggered. And that's why we wanted to have a conversation about navigating holiday triggers today. So, Lindsay, do you want to start us off? I know you were recently shopping for something to wear to a company holiday party, and I'm wondering sort of what experience that brought up for you.
Yeah, so recently started doing some holiday dress shopping, and I think it brought up a lot of how I would have navigated this in the past compared to how I navigated it this time. I think in the past I would get so overwhelmed when I was in my recovery. My relationship with shopping sort of changed. In the beginning of my recovery, it was very fixated on size and how to make myself fit into the clothes.
Mm,
Whereas now it's more of like, how do I make the clothes work for me?
mm,
And having different goals in mind, like I want to feel comfortable in what I'm wearing. The color is important to me. Where I shop is important instead of being focused on the size.
mm.
And normally, I avoid holiday parties for this specific reason of having to shop and have this whole experience. And now being so deep into my recovery and having a different relationship with shopping, it's yes, the holidays still bring a lot of stress, but the way that I'm thinking about the experience is very different. And there's actually a lot more freedom in trying to navigate and find a dress, more so than ever before. Where it's like I can experiment with the kind of clothes that I'm comfortable wearing, whereas before I wouldn't have that freedom to experiment. It would be a certain cut, a certain color, a certain size, and if I couldn't make those things happen, then I would just avoid the entire experience altogether.
Mhm.
But now it's like I can navigate this experience with my friends, get their opinion, get mine. And so it made the experience much more enjoyable than in the past.
That's awesome. And actually, we're all going to the same holiday party.
Mhm.
And so we all had an experience, I think, of shopping for something for this party.
Mhm.
And I think it's so I mean, I really relate to what you're saying, Lindsay, about like with recovery, you kind of bring a different mind to it, like a less self-critical mind where you're like, how do I need to look? What do I need to wear? What is the style? What am I, versus like, but I mean, not trying to fit your body into clothes or other people's trends or whatever, but trying to find the outfit that fits you. But I did find shopping for this holiday party a little bit vulnerable because it's kind of like a dressy thing, and I'm like a really casual person, and I'm not particularly comfortable in dressy clothes. So it was a little bit of like, what am I gonna do? Like, and I ended up actually ordering a bunch of different things and trying a bunch of different things on. So many things that didn't work. But my metric, I think, for it was like, what am I going to be comfortable in? What's like really me, you know? And the trends right now, they are not, you'll not see me in a halter top and like baggy jeans. Never, like that would never work for me. And I think that in my old mindset, I would feel like I was only really a worthy human being if I could fit into that trend or whatever trend it is. And that is like the exact opposite of what's going to work on my body. You know what I mean? And so I kind of just like fell back into classic. I found an old skirt in my closet that I really like. I bought like a new shirt that, is kind of like just flowy, just kind of my thing. And I'm excited. It's gonna be comfortable. No halter tops.
No halters. I also found the shopping for this particular party we're all going to be a little bit anxiety provoking. One of the things that's been super fun in my recovery, and I think that's felt really empowering for me, is finding clothes to express myself and who I am. I categorize myself as a very like quirky, outgoing, charismatic, kind of like I use the word spunky. I don't know if other people would say that about me, but I identify as like a very spunky person and I like to wear fun clothes that I think kind of communicate that to the world. Um, and I did something kind of what similar to Allison did, but did not order a bunch of things at once. I found this dress and I was so excited about it. And I was like, this is it. It came, I tried it on. It was absolutely hideous. Like it was not a good look for me, literally at all. Um, and instead of freaking out, putting the blame on my body, I looked bad, I looked ugly, something's wrong with me. I was able to kind of pause and be like, you know what? It's just not a very flattering cut. Like, that's okay. We can pivot, we can try something new. Went back to the drawing board, tried another dress. That one also came. Um, Also not going to work, a little too scandalous for a work event. But more so got the vibe that I was going for. And I was like, okay, we have more information. Again, this is not anything wrong because of my body. I
I love that.
just,
Just information, really.
yeah, no, it really was
What
just
a good
information.
mindset.
Kind of like pivoted again. And then third time's a charm, found a dress that works. But I think something that was really helpful for me, and I think this shows up in a lot of shopping that I do in my recovery, like I think for me, dressing rooms in like big stores with the really gross fluorescent lighting and the mirrors from like 12 different angles. And when you're like having so much pressure of like, oh my God, there's 80 different options, like that is something I know I do not do well with. That makes me super anxious. I don't think I've ever like been standing in a fitting room and I'm like, yeah, I look good as heck right now. And I tend to like the way that I generally look. So I do not like I'm an online shopper through and through. I will order it at my house. I will try it on in the comfort of my home. I will make myself be in a setting that feels safe and comfortable to me because trying on clothes can be a very vulnerable thing. Eating disorder recovery or not, I think that can be a very like intimate, vulnerable, challenging experience. So that I know something that was something that was really helpful for me was being able to like do it in the comfort of my own home and give myself like some compassion and just kind of laugh when I was like, damn, this is like not a good option. Like this is not a cute look, but like that's okay. Like we can return it and we can try again.
Yeah, I look back like with one of the dresses that I ordered, I tried it on and it was just like couldn't look more different than it looked. And I looked back at that picture when I went to return it and I'm like, yeah, because they like lopped off half this person's body.
Yeah.
Like bodies don't look like that. At least my body doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing just like how different things look, the way that they are actually presented to us and then how they look on our bodies. And that could be very triggering for somebody in eating disorder recovery to see an outfit look a certain way on someone else and look different on ourselves. And something that probably we need a lot of like support for. I mean,
Mhm.
I remember when you're talking about like not liking dressing rooms, and I remember realizing that when I was in dressing rooms, which for me were horrible places as well, I remember like hearing so many people say negative things out loud to themselves and their friends in dressing rooms. And
Mhm.
they were things that I was saying to myself too. It was like, oh gosh, this is just like the mecca of self-hatred, like where that like shame comes up that we internalize in diet culture and where we're just like saying it out loud and like projecting it into the mirror and seeing, I think a lot of times what we fear we are instead of what we really are.
Mhm.
you know? And I remember one time one of those stores, I don't remember which store did this, but there was a store that put out Post-it notes and pens at the dressing room. And they were like, write yourself a sweet note before you go into the dressing room and put it on the mirror, Post-it note, put it on the mirror.
That's so cute.
Yeah, and then you would leave it there, not just for you, but for other people. And it was like a really nice, new kind of empowering relationship in a dressing room that I think is helpful.
Hmm.
I remember when I first started my recovery, my therapist had to educate me on um, the type of glass that dressing rooms will use.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it was just like this really crazy kind of epiphany because I was like, I don't understand why I look so different in all different stores. And it's like really like messing with me. And she had to tell me that specific stores will use a certain glass as part of their marketing trend to get you to buy the clothes because the way that the glass is framed will make you look a certain way.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh God.
Yeah, and like and size manipulation as
Hmm.
well. Like how can I think it's important to be aware of that, like that different brands cut their clothes differently. And
Hmm.
certain brands are just not going to work for a lot of people because of the way that they're cut. And also, a brand that maybe works for you really well or a store where you find a lot of stuff, it's not always maybe going to be that way. I remember
Hmm.
being at a dinner party and I was sitting next to somebody who worked at BB. This was a long time ago. And she was like, yeah, we're just putting out our new line. They made the sizes. So they made like the 8 be labeled a 6
Wow.
because they wanted people to come in and fit into a smaller size in order to kind of feel better about themselves. And I was like, wow, that is so incredibly tricky,
Hmm.
and kind of what we go through when we're going from store to store, brand to brand, fashion trend to fashion trend is that they're just different cuts.
Yeah, I think I own a lot of pairs of pants. I probably own like 30 pairs of pants, which is a story for a different day because that's excessive. But I think I probably have pants in like 6 different sizes, depending on what store they're from, just based on the way that it fits me and the way that I feel comfortable. And you never like places do cut their clothing so differently. And I mean, I actually have pants from the same store that I'm different sizes based on like the style of the pants. So something that I had to learn pretty early on in my recovery was taking the meaning away from the actual number. It wasn't about the number at all. It's about like how it fits, how I feel, how I can navigate in it, how is it comfortable, not the number on the tag in the back because it can be different on a different day. That was something that I really had to learn. It was really challenging for me at first because I think eating disorders like to latch on
Yeah.
to that numerical data and use it as like a point to measure worth or progress or all the things. And it can be really challenging to kind of fight that narrative.
Sure.
We fight that narrative by kind of bringing a new mind to it.
Hmm.
Like that's, I think, so much what we're trying to cultivate in recovery is bringing a new mind and a new perspective to the way that we see ourselves. And one that is more compassionate
Hmm.
instead of self-critical. And, I remember this kind of like turning point in my own recovery where I had been working with a therapist. I had been like, my body image had been improving a little bit. And I remember I was like walking towards this building where there were these big like glass doors and I saw my reflection. And immediately I just started saying the meanest things to myself, about how I looked and why did I pick that outfit and how did I let myself get this way. And like normally on a normal day back then, I just would have soaked all that in and been so depressed and anxious and miserable. But
Hmm.
in that particular moment, it actually hurt. Like I actually felt the pain of what my mind was doing to me. And I even got like tears in my eyes because I realized like what a mean thing to do to me is I'm just like
Yeah.
walking around in the world. And it helped me realize that Nobody should be talking to me that way, and I certainly should not be talking to myself that way. And I think that was kind of one of the things that I worked on is how would I treat a friend in this situation? So
Mhm.
if I'm trying on a dress for a holiday event and it doesn't fit me well, and I want to just go ahead and like criticize myself about that, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to think about like, what if this is my child? What if this is my friend? What if
Mhm.
it's somebody I care about? How am I actually going to respond in that moment? Because that's the response that I need. And that's the response that I have to be able to work on giving to myself.
Mhm.
And even if I don't believe that compassionate thing, it's still good to practice it because
Mhm.
it helps us believe, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I know something that has also been really helpful for me in challenging the dialogue, the negative dialogue when it does come into my head, is very much connecting to my values and kind of challenging, like, is what I am telling myself what I actually want to believe. So it's like, oh, I look bad in this outfit, or my body's bigger than I want my body to be, and kind of like zooming out and being like, do I value thinness? Like, is that the thing that I want? Is that what I want the guiding post of my life to be? Or do I want to connect to the fact that I really care about authenticity and being connected to people and compassion and creativity, and spontaneity? And like, I have to kind of like rein it in and be like, Sydney, like, those are the guiding posts of your life. And I also have to remind myself so often that, like, being uncomfortable is not always a bad thing. Like, it can just be noise in the background, and I can be anxious about something and I can keep moving through my day and like stopping and acknowledging it and being like, yeah, I hear it. That kind of sucks. I don't love that, but also how can I take care of myself and keep moving through the day? So those are two kind of things that I think can ground me a little bit in moments where chatter gets loud in my head.
So wise. Yeah. And um, sometimes we're feeling vulnerable because we're actually getting outside of our comfort zone.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe for when it comes to body image struggles, if we just stay hidden away, maybe we get some relief from that, but then we're not really living our lives. And to think about like maybe feeling a little bit nervous or anxious about how I am seen by others is part of what we have to walk through in
Mhm.
order to live a life, like you were saying, more according to your values, you know, of authenticity and connection, kind of have to be out there. So you might have to walk through that fear.
Mhm.
And we have this possible emotional corrective thing that can happen when we walk through our fear that, you know, we can connect and we can feel more of a sense of belonging and acceptance, which is so often where the wound is with
Mhm.
eating disorders. And also, like, it might go bad, you know,
Yeah.
but then we have opportunities in recovery to like seek support around that, to
Mhm.
like work things through, to self regulate, to be that kind voice for ourselves or that kind presence for ourselves that we were wishing we might have. I love our clients say the most amazing things that we never forget. And one of the things one of my clients said who was struggling with body image is she showed me this picture of her out at this event. She goes, I hated the way that I looked in this picture. It made me so sad at first. And she was like, but then I looked at the picture again and I was like, I think the important thing in this picture is that I was there.
Mm.
It's like, oh, yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
You're living your life. You're not letting it the pressure keep you down or keep you hidden.
And I think it's so easy, like when you're feeling stressed about the way that your body looks, to avoid going to that event or to avoid hanging out with those friends. And so I think it's really amazing that she was able to take a step back and zoom out and say, actually, the most important thing was I went and maybe I had fun and maybe it was an experience that I didn't think I was gonna have in, instead of like focusing on the way that her body looked.
Yeah, such a good reframe, right? What about holiday food, holiday meals, family, like all that? Like those are big triggers. Those are wonderful things, and they're also triggers at holiday time for somebody struggling with body image or disordered eating, right?
Yeah, I think something I'm working on surrounding kind of like the food and family piece with a lot of my clients right now is the idea of like a cope ahead plan. So like how can we talk about triggers that we anticipate might come up over the holidays and how can we identify 5 different coping skills that you can go through a list and use if you notice yourself getting escalated. So for a lot of my clients, some of the things that have been helpful is like identifying a support person of like, is there someone that I can step away for a second and text or call to kind of like help me return to baseline, kind of process if they want to process, or just get support if they want to get support, vent if you need to vent. I know some of my clients are like, okay, stepping outside and getting some fresh air and just like feeling the sun on my skin or like the cold air is really helpful. I know for some of my clients, it's like having the ability to text me and just shoot me a text and be like, hey, I'm having a little bit of a hard time right now. I know for some of my clients, it's like having a playlist that they've created on their phone that they can listen to on the way there or the way home to kind of like decompress or prepare. And I think something that can be really helpful is just a little bit of intentionality going into the holidays of like, what do I know are things that have historically been a little bit harder for me and how knowing what I know now, how could I maybe approach that in a way that might feel supportive to me?
That's such a good idea. Cope ahead plan. Love it. Love it. Because grandma's going to be there, right? And
Yeah.
grandma's going to say a thing about food or body. And I'm not picking on grandmas out there because not
Yeah.
every grandma's like that, but like someone there's going to probably do something like that too, and like, how are you going to cope with that? Were you going to say something, Lindsay?
Yeah, I was thinking about the family, one of their traditions is they each make a dish.
Mm.
So my client was talking about how sometimes when it's time for plating their meals, they have this internal conflict because there's a part of them that feels that they have to take all the food because each person in the family took the necessary steps and time and intention to make a dish, while there was this other part of them that was like struggling with the guilt afterwards. And so we talked about navigating that conflict and paying attention to how your body is feeling while you're eating. So we're not getting so full, but we're getting to a place where we feel comfortable. And then what are those coping skills going to look like to combat some of the guilt that might arise too?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think like internal or external boundaries could be really helpful there. An internal boundary is one kind of more that you feel and create. Other people might not necessarily even know you're creating a boundary, but it's a little space or a little help that you're giving yourself. Or then external boundaries where you say something. Because, like, I could imagine in that situation would be like, thank you so much for this amazing food. I just kind of working on some stuff for myself, or I'm not really all that hungry. So I'm just going to take a little bit. Like I could imagine a boundary like that. And also, I think it's an internal boundary to take that food and to be able to like eat it at your own space, in your own pace, in the way that really works for you, and to not have to carry another person's feelings with you so much, or to maybe start challenging that a little bit more. And maybe other people can deal with their feelings and you can deal with yours.
Yeah. And I remember like the holidays being a vulnerable time for me too, like during my recovery period and having to set those boundaries with my family members of don't tell me how to plate my food.
Yeah.
'Cause it's already anxiety inducing. And I know what I have the capacity to do in a way that is still in alignment with my recovery process and where I want to go, and not needing that third, fourth, fifth opinion.
Kind of a little bit like Sydney's cope ahead plan for, you know, how we're going to feel in the situation when there might be triggers. I think for a lot of people, like a cope ahead plan for food is a good idea too, because holiday food is extra special and it's oftentimes, nostalgic, and it's beautiful and special. We all want to be able to experience it, and we should experience it. There are different types of eating disorders. And, I've shared that mine was oftentimes that I didn't really have an off switch with certain foods, that I felt very dependent and hooked on certain foods. And so if you put me in a situation with a lot of holiday food around, it maybe was going to be a binge for me. And I think one of the things that I learned about that I needed to do to protect myself is I needed to handle it much differently than I did when I was in my eating disorder. If I was in my eating disorder and I was going to be around holiday food, it was like, oh, well, then I'm skipping meals. I'm not eating all day. I've got to earn that food. I'm going to do an extra exercise, all these kinds of things. And I would actually end up being around holiday food, starving, ravenous, which would really set up my overeating. And what I learned I needed to do was to nourish myself extra well during the holidays, all the food groups, meals and snacks, getting it all in, doing it consistently, that I could walk around in kind of for me, triggering food environment without having so many cravings and having so much temptation, and also slowing down a little bit, letting myself eat the things that I loved, but when I would eat foods that would be hard for me to eat in moderation, I would just slow down and get mindful, because that's how we bring the higher brain online and how we better regulate our eating. So that was a really important part of my plan, or my cope ahead plan for the holiday food stuff. How about you guys? Did you ever find the holiday food difficult?
I did find the holiday food really difficult for a really long time. I think something that was helpful for me in early recovery was prioritizing the foods that I enjoyed and the foods that felt a little bit more comfortable to me. And some of those overlapped and some of those didn't. I think, Alison, what you said also was very on par for me, making sure I was nourishing throughout the entire day so that I didn't put so much energy and meaning on this one holiday meal during the day, but it was just another meal, just with slightly different food that I'm not having on as regular of a basis. But when I think Thanksgiving, I'm I know I love green bean casserole. I love mashed potatoes. I love the turkey, and I love pumpkin pie. And making sure that at one point, those were some of the only foods I was comfortable with. So if that was kind of the MO for the year, that was okay. But making sure I had appropriate portion sizes of those foods that I felt comfortable with. And as time has gone on, I will eat absolutely anything now, but it was kind of playing with what was comfortable, but not too restrictive, but also not pushing myself so far into anxiety that I was going to be having a meltdown the entire time we were sitting at the table. But always leaning back on this is what I know is appropriate for me to nourish myself.
Mm-hmm. That is a tightrope that you were walking.
Yeah. And knowing that if I made a mistake, or maybe I underportioned a little bit, or if I overportioned a little bit, or maybe my plate wasn't correct proportionally against itself, it was going to be okay. It was just a single meal. And not to say that one meal isn't wildly stressful or very anxiety producing or feels kind of a lot of energy, but also it is one singular meal. And one of the things that really was helpful for me in early recovery was do the next best thing. So if I had a meal where I maybe messed up a little bit, or I didn't necessarily show up to it in the way that I wanted to, that's okay. How can I do better the next time? It's time for me to eat, and it's time for me to nourish myself.
I love how you're kind of how you talked about kind of right sizing that for yourself, that under-eating a little or overeating a little felt so scary at a certain point, and you needed to kind of right size that and make that less big. And I think that is part of, what we're really going for in recovery is learning how to trust our bodies, learning how to trust that our bodies are wise and they can handle eating fluctuations. And we don't have to we don't have to make it so big that something happened with food that we were uncomfortable with or that was imperfect, because normal eating is imperfect eating and our bodies can handle that, you know? I don't know. How do you think you were right sizing that for yourself?
I think in the moment, a lot of fact checking of like, do I need to be freaking out about this as much as I'm freaking out? Or like, am I thinking about this in more black or white terms? And is there a possibility that there is some kind of gray in it? I know I had a belief for a really long time that I either had to be doing my eating disorder 100% perfectly or doing recovery 100% perfectly. And the further I got into recovery, I kind of was able to come to terms with the fact that there is no way to do recovery 100% perfectly. Like that actually defeats the entire purpose of recovery because perfectionism is not involved in the definition of recovery at all. There's going to be good days and bad days and mistakes and wonderful, beautiful, successful moments. So reminding myself to like rein it in, and nothing was going to be like absolutely earth shattering if it's a single instance of something happening, and giving myself the space to like, it's okay to make mistakes. I'm not expected to have the right answer and make the right decision every single time, especially right off the bat. I think that's unrealistic. And allowing myself space to like, it's okay to make mistakes. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're a human.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, my eating disorder always leaned on the restrictive side. So the holidays were always pretty stressful. Also, I love holiday food, all of it. And so the anxiety was very much about like, because I know that I love stuffing and turkey, mashed potatoes, pies, all of it, is that going to set me up for a binge? And sometimes it did. And sometimes I ate too much and I didn't feel very good afterwards. But that was a process, sort of like Sydney, where I had to learn over the years where it's not restricting and then flipping to the other side with food that I really like, but it's a gradual process, like starting off with an initial plate and asking myself, okay, do I want this? And if I do, cool. Like you go out for seconds or you save room for dessert. But instead of having like these self-punishing thoughts and feelings of like, oh my God, I did what I was not supposed to do, it became more about, okay, I know that I like holiday food and like this is okay. And it's not going to be earth shattering and it's not going to be the end of the world. But it took a long time to get there.
I appreciate you sharing that so much, because I know people out there who are, whose eating disorders are more restrictive. Like the Thanksgiving meal and the holiday food, like it can feel just so incredibly scary. And I want to point out how brave you were being in that moment, because instead of going in there with all your like draconian eating disorder rules, you were going in and you were trying to navigate the food and you were trying to enjoy the holiday and enjoy the situation. And I heard you being mindful. I heard you talking about how one of the steps in your process was this mindfulness, where you were sort of like reflecting upon, okay, do I want this? How does it feel? What's going on in me? And trying to like pair your eating with your body a little bit more, instead of these maybe like diet culture rules or control strategies that you had been kind of bowing to before you started practicing that.
Yeah. And I mean, it took a long time to get there. But I'm definitely in a place now where I look forward to consulting about what we're going to have for dinner, or I spend a lot of the holidays with my friends, so collaborating with them of I'm going to bring this and you guys cook this and what kind of drinks are we going to have, and it went from a place of so much anxiety to a place of this is actually kind of fun and I enjoy it and I know what I want to bring because I'm a big sugar person and a big dessert person. And so like, yeah, it becomes more enjoyable. I think the further along you get into recovery and each time like having to reframe the situation, at least for me, gets a little bit easier as the years go on. So that's a really like positive and nice place to be. It doesn't feel so restraining or controlling as it once did.
Mhm.
I'm appreciating that shift so much. And I think it's what I'm wanting for, anybody out there struggling with disordered eating, body image at holiday time is to be able to shift into or find just a little bit more enjoyment and presence in the people and in the food and in yourself and in your process, because our holidays are so beautiful. And we deserve to be able to be fully present in them and to be connected and to get excited about the food and to taste the different flavors and, and to just, be in life instead of being in fear. So I really hope that for the people who are watching. Thanks so much for talking about this with me, both of you. Would love to hear from our audience if you have any questions, if you relate to anything we said, if you disagree, we'd love to have a conversation. So leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for being here.